Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Ted Holsey. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Expert Series. This webinar series brings together experts from eFolder's staff and partner community for deep dive discussions on key service and technical topics. Today, we are joined by Lliam Holmes, CEO of MIS Solutions in Suwanee, Georgia. In just a moment, I will further introduce Lliam. Before we go through the agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available for a limited time to the partners that are registered for the event. We will also make copies of the slides available to those that attended the event. With over 125 people registered, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event either by streaming it to your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's session, but you may submit questions as we go along, and we will try to address them on the fly. Now let me introduce our guest. Lliam Holmes, founder and CEO of MIS Solutions, has over 25 years of experience in the IT industry. He has served in roles such as field tech, systems engineer, project manager, software developer, and business consultant. Before MIS Solutions, Lliam worked with many companies, including Bethco Incorporated, Optima Technologies, and BravePoint, serving as consultant for Fortune 500 companies. Among his clients were such recognizable names as Nokia Cellular, Napa Auto Parts, Eli Lilly, HGTV, and Crozer Keystone Hospitals. In 1995, he started MIS Solutions as a technology service and consulting firm serving the Gwinnett and Atlanta, Georgia area. In his current role, he is responsible for strategic direction, research and development, and operations at MIS Solutions, as well as strategic business consulting for clients. He enjoys serving others and helping business owners tackle challenges with innovative and creative solutions. As a leader, Lliam is involved in a national operations group designed to serve managed service providers, as well as a best practices network monitoring and remediation group focused on creating network monitoring and issue remediation strategies. He is actively involved in his community and passionate about serving in the children's ministry at his church. Welcome to Lliam.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to start out with a brief introduction to the eFolder AppAssure Cloud and then turn things over to Lliam. Lliam will dig into the key technologies AppAssure employs to help deliver a more reliable backup and disaster recovery service offering. And we will conclude with a special section for your questions. Organizations have to defend against three kinds of business interruptions today. First, everyday disasters are incredibly common. Hardware failures, especially disk drive failures, occur all the time. Users delete or lose files. Corrupted software installs are common. Human error is a key contributor to everyday disasters. Natural disasters or site-wide disasters are far less common. They do happen, however, and the consequences for a business can be deadly. Fire or property insurance always seems like a needless expense until you need it. The same goes for backup and disaster recovery preparedness. In some parts of the country, say in the Gulf Coast or in Tornado Alley, the likelihood of a site-wide disaster is even higher. Most businesses cannot survive the complete loss of their critical business data. If customer records, financials, and accounting records are completely lost, most businesses would have a hard time recovering from such an event. Lastly, businesses need to guard against any kind of system downtime. In today's competitive market, the fast eat the slow. Businesses can't afford for their employees to be down, out of touch, or unproductive. Servers, workstations, and mobile assets need to operate at peak performance so knowledge workers, salespeople, engineers, and support personnel can get their day-to-day jobs done well. If disasters do occur, recovery has to be fast and complete. And you need to guarantee that the commitment or service level agreements you have in place can be met or exceeded. The key to managed services is a chain of promises to clients about performance, uptime, and resiliency in exchange for a flow of monthly revenue from these clients. When something does go wrong with the client's servers or infrastructure, you need to ensure that you can recover quickly and completely without fail. This diagram provides a simple overview of the main functions of the eFolder AppAssure Cloud. AppAssure and eFolder have joined forces to deliver the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, a service that replicates AppAssure bare metal backup images to the eFolder storage cloud and enables multiple disaster recovery options. This solution combines the power of AppAssure software with eFolder Cloud backup and recovery services. This service will be generally available to eFolder partners on April 2nd. Before turning things over to Lliam, let me just make a few comments about how a service like this works. AppAssure software periodically creates image-based bare metal backups from the client servers or workstations at pre-configured intervals. The backup images are automatically backed up to a local storage environment running the AppAssure core. The local AppAssure core replicates the images to a fully managed AppAssure core in the eFolder AppAssure Cloud. eFolder delivers various system monitoring, data privacy, and data integrity technologies to guarantee the success and reliability of the images contained in the eFolder storage cloud. In the event of a server outage, the AppAssure software enables fast on-site recovery to physical or virtual environments or to dissimilar hardware. In the event of a local disaster that destroyed a location or the servers, eFolder supplies multiple disaster recovery options for the bare metal images stored in the eFolder storage cloud, including image download, expedited shipment of the images on disk or NAS, or the rapid virtualization in the eFolder continuity cloud. Okay, that was a brief introduction to the eFolder AppAssure Cloud. Now let me turn things over to our expert, Lliam Holmes. Lliam, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So we're talking a little bit about AppAssure, and we're talking about the continuity cloud and what that means for everybody. And, you know, before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of some of this, probably want to talk a little bit about who we are, talk a little bit about terminology so we can all get on the same page. I know that I've spoken about AppAssure and I've spoken about BDR solutions in the past, and one of the things I've found most helpful is to make sure that everybody gets started on the same page so that the terminology doesn't get in the way and everybody can follow along and track well. So again, I am the CEO of MIS Solutions. We are a managed service provider here in Swanee. We specialize in small to medium-sized businesses, and specifically we specialize in customers that are in the 20 to 200 desktop arena. We were started in 1995, and we've been involved in many of the BDR, the backup disaster recovery kinds of technologies. It is one of our niches. So these things would be inclusive of applications like AppAssure and eFolder data centers and SANs and clustering and virtualization and disaster recovery kinds of technologies. So really say all that to say that, you know, this is an arena that we sort of specialize in, and it's something that we have had a bit of experience in. So if we kind of look a little bit about eFolder, one of the common questions I get is, how did we get involved with eFolder? How did this partnership come to be? And I can tell you, for us, when we initially started looking at this, we really started in a situation where we weren't looking to really change our backup and disaster recovery platform. At the time, we were using a product called StorageCraft, or Shadow Protect, made by StorageCraft. And what we were really looking for is we were looking for a provider that could offer us some off-site capabilities. We knew that virtualization was key for us. We were really trying to close that gap between what happens when a server goes down and it's beyond a, you know, I can restore it right here, right? I've lost a facility, we've had a fire, we've had a theft, that kind of thing. How do we close that gap? And, you know, this is one of those things that's a lot more complicated than people might think originally, because if you really get into this market space and you look around, there's a lot of folks out there who would tell you that that's what they specialize in, that they have virtualization kinds of technologies, and that this is really what they're designed to do. But when you get to the nuts and bolts of it, you start to ask the questions about, you know, how would this actually happen? You know, walk me through a simulation. If we lost X, tell me the 5 things that we would do. What you tend to discover is that those conversations break down pretty quickly. So we originally started, when we were looking at getting involved with eFolder, we really started not by looking at eFolder. We were really looking at somebody that could provide that off-premise solution for us. And what we figured out was that with StorageCraft, the product that we were using previously, we didn't have a great way to do that. There wasn't a partnership created. There wasn't something that could be done. And the technology itself didn't really lend itself well to doing what we needed to do. So we met eFolder, and we ended up putting together a partnership that we think has been a fantastic one for us, and it's really allowed us to create that catastrophic failure or that premise failure solution that we want to talk a little bit about today. All right, trying to flip slides here. Am I presenter?
Yeah, you should be. You should be able to.
There we go. All right.
All right.
So this really comes down to trying to narrow down how many features we have and which are the features that really meant the most to us. So one thing that you'll find with AppAssure as you're looking at other vendors and you're comparing various products is that there are a lot of differences between the products, starting with the terminology, ending with some of the unique technologies that they've embedded inside the product. But before we kind of get into those unique technologies, I want to really talk a little bit about terminology so that everybody can kind of see how this works. So the one thing that you tend to have with AppAssure is AppAssure has, different than most folks, is everything that they allow you to do is done within their console. So if you are a Shadow Protect user, one of the things that you would see as a big difference is that with Shadow Protect, for good or for bad, you can do lots of things. You can mount images and you can do restores and that kind of stuff, but you can do those things at the file level outside of their console. So the one thing that you have to get used to with AppAssure is everything that they do is done within the console. So that's important to point out because if you look at their licensing model is one that says that you have agents and then you have a core. The core is sort of their enterprise management console. Now, their core has lots of functionality that's built into it, and it allows you to be very flexible in how you design your solution specific for whatever kind of customer you have. So they call the enterprise console, the thing that you log in and you manage everything, that's called the core. And then the software that you install on all of the various servers and workstations and laptops, that's called the agent. So for anybody who's coming across from one of the other platforms, that's an important differentiation to make as we start to talk about some of how this works. Okay, so as I suggested before, there's lots of different unique technologies that AppAssure has, but the 5 ones that I'd like to kind of focus a little bit on as we go through this, and by all means, if anybody has any questions specific to any of these or anybody has other kinds of questions that they're maybe facing, please, by all means, ask a question and let's see if we can't get you answered and make sure that we get you on the same page. But the first piece that I want to talk about is application integrity check. So within the BDR solution, you'll see that there is some innate capabilities for AppAssure to be able to check things like Microsoft Exchange databases and SharePoint databases and SQL Server databases. So we'll talk a little bit about that. There is a global deduplication technology that's built in there. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means and why that's important and how that really plays into things like retention periods and disk space usage and those kinds of things. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that. There is the fast recovery with the virtual standby server. One of the things you'll find as we talk about this section is that this isn't a one-size-fits-all. So you'll see in some solutions that, in order for this to work, there are sort of pre-prescribing what that hypervisor looks like, whether that's a Hyper-V or a VirtualBox or a VMware solution. But there's some multiple options here that I think that is important to understand. And then, of course, there's the silent data corruption and prevention. So this is something that's pretty important that we want to talk a little bit about. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the next piece, and that's sort of the in-the-cloud recovery. So when I mean in-the-cloud recovery, I'm talking about if I lost a key production server and that server was on site and it represented something that was significantly important to my customer. Maybe I've lost the whole facility. Maybe I've only lost a server that's critically important. How would I recover that? How would that be in the cloud? What would I do? What options do I have? How would I actually be able to use that server that's running in the cloud to be able to augment what's happening on customer premise to be able to create some sort of solution such that you can get your customer back between the tracks. All right, so trying to move there. All right, so we talk a little bit about the applications and how that works in AppAssure. So the one thing that we find is an incredibly important thing for us is if you look at backups and you talk to people who are in the BDR space, everybody talks a lot about backups. We back it up this way, we do it that way, we do it nightly, we do it incrementals, we do this and we do that, and there's a tremendous amount of conversation that happens about backups. But the two things that you never really hear a whole lot about is integrity of the backups, and you don't hear a tremendous amount about people talking about the restore on the backup. So one of the things that's really important, and it's something that we haven't seen in any other application in the BDR space, is the application integrity check. So what that is for AppAssure, when you back up, for example, we have a screenshot here of the Microsoft Exchange. It backs it up. You're doing incrementals through the day, right? So you can do them as little as every 5 minutes or up to whatever resolution you want. But at night what happens is it actually will mount the backup. It will validate that the store is actually mountable, that it's not in a dirty shutdown, that you don't have transaction logs that are damaged, that there's nothing wrong with that database for Exchange if you were to actually have to go in and restore that database. So oftentimes one of the things that we've run into with various BDR solutions is the fact that when you go and you do a restore, some of those application-specific parts may come in an instance that is not immediately usable. So for example, if this was an Exchange database, you might find that the Exchange database is in a dirty shutdown. You may find you have to run an integrity check to be able to clean that up. The problem with doing that is, although you were able to maybe restore that file in some reasonable amount of time, by the time you've restored it and by the time you've gone through an integrity check and you've got everything going and you get to the point where the application is actually back online, it can be several hours. It could be 6 or 8 hours depending on the size of that database. So it's really important that you're able to do these kinds of checks as you're looking in the database. So the three main applications that you'll see in AppAssure that they have this application integrity check on is for Microsoft SQL servers. It allows you to do a log translation, truncation, and it allows you to do an attachability check. So you can actually take a Microsoft SQL Server database, attach it to a SQL instance that's running on your BDR appliance, so it's not even in a production environment, and that allows you to ensure that that database is in fact usable. You can do it with a Microsoft Exchange, like we said a few minutes ago, and you can do it with Microsoft SharePoint. So if you have one of those three applications, so we're not talking about file-based data, right? We're talking about SQL Server databases, those kinds of things, and you want to actually be able to check that not only is the database mountable and the backup and the chain and everything is good, but you want to actually test those applications specifically. This is AppAssure's way of allowing you to do that. All right, so in that kind of comes this next piece, and there's several parts that go with the deduplication part. One is that with the retention period, with the amount of imaging, with the compliance that you're seeing a lot of customers having to get into today, whether those are SARBOX or PCI compliance, or you're dealing with a customer that's having to deal with email archive compliance, these kinds of things, what you're seeing is folks are having to keep on or hang on to data much longer than what they have traditionally. You see with imaging systems, with PACS systems, that people are really exploding the amount of data that they have. And I see this often now impacting the backups, the BDR solutions, because a terabyte of backups used to be considered a tremendous amount of on-site storage. It's really not anymore. So you have to find ways to be able to combat that, and that's really where the deduplication comes into effect. So the deduplication is a technology that's actually built into the core. It's done after the fact, meaning it's not done during each incremental, but it goes through those stores and it pulls out all the duplicate data, and it allows you to also work with compression, and it gives you an average of a 5-to-1 compression and deduplication ratio that you can deal with to be able to get the most out of those disk stores. So you'll be able to see that in the deduplication part. It's one of the few BDR solutions that we've actually seen that has a deduplication built into it. And as I mentioned before, in being able to have that deduplication, it really affects, image replication. It affects the on-site storage. It affects all of the various pieces that touch, the size of that data and the transportability thereof. So the duplication is actually something that's pretty important, and to my knowledge, is AppAssure's only one of the few folks who have that. All right, so the next piece is really the virtual standby. So the virtual standby is the ability to say, as each incremental is done, I can take that incremental and I can push that incremental into some sort of virtual environment. Now, you'll see that with AppAssure's implementation of their virtual standby server, they become somewhat technology agnostic. You'll see in this particular screenshot, you can see that it can go to a Hyper-V. You can see that it can go to a VMware solution. You can also take these to OVF files so that you can move them around and do things with them. The other thing that's important to note too is you can take them, if you're looking at like a VMware solution, you can take them either into just a standard VMDK that you can do it as you need to do. So you could, for example, run them on a VMware player on a BDR solution. You can also take them if you actually have a full VMware environment, and you can take these VMDKs and post them directly into that VMware appliance, so that you are looking at a BDR appliance in one box, and in another box where you may have infrastructure for VMware, you're actually pushing those standby servers directly into your production VMware appliances so that you can boot those guys up. You'll also see that you have some various options here in terms of being able to say how often you want to have those VMs updated. And this can be pretty important and has worked really well for us for being able to create things like simulated recoveries, and we have customers who are asking us to do recovery restorations. We're able to simulate updates and upgrades to applications. For example, we had one a week or two ago where a customer said to us, we need to upgrade one of our core infrastructure, sort of an agency management system. It was quite a large upgrade. It was going to take 4 or 5 hours to do. They wanted to make sure it wasn't going to break their production environment. And in this situation, we were actually able to take their backup, put it in a VM. We completely executed the upgrade in the VM. We then were able to test to make sure that everything worked as expected. And then we were able to come back and go through and do that into production. So the virtual standby has been a tremendous hit with us, and has really allowed us to make sure that we keep those standbys ready and able to go whenever we need customers that have a failure. So that's been very important to us. The other thing that's you see, and you'll see a lot of vendors talk a lot about silent data corruption, and I guess one of the questions that I get asked a lot from some of my peers is, what is silent data corruption? How does it happen? If the backup shows that it's good in the console or in the log, how is it possible that the backup is actually bad? How do you get yourself into a situation where you have some exposure or some liability there? And these sort of topics and discussions really are all talking about the silent data corruption, right? So one of the things that you'll see both in AppAssure, and you'll see it again in the eFolder infrastructure, is how to prevent this silent data corruption. So in our view of things, you'll see that this is done and then double checked, and it really is to prevent that. So when a incremental is taken, one of the things that AppAssure will do is that it will test the integrity of the chain to make sure that nothing has happened. When that is done locally and those backups are then moved into the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, then eFolder does it again. When that backup hits the core that's in AppAssure, it also checks to make sure that nothing has been damaged and that it's able to mount it, that it's able to push it into a VM, that everything is good there, right? So that's pretty important. But I think it's also worth noting that eFolder has their own technology. They're outside of AppAssure, where they will come back and they will look at checksums of data every 2K bit blocks to make sure that nothing else has happened. And that's really important, because what it means is it means that you have one application, the AppAssure core, that's doing the local backup, and it is performing functions on that backup, things like roll-ups, things like retention periods, things like integrity checks, right? But that data is then moved across into the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, and in that technology, all of those checks are happening again when it reaches that second data center. So again, you got roll-ups, you have integrity checks, all of the things that you would expect, and you have eFolder as a third-party provider coming in and also verifying that nothing else has happened. And I think that that's really something that's very important to stress, because, you know, as we've talked before with many of us in these groups, is really it's about the restore process, it's about the restore reliability, it's about the customer confidence, because, you know, as we mentioned at the beginning of this call, you know, the premise of a managed service provider is you agree to trade services for fixed revenue, but there are promises that are made along the way, and those promises aren't always realized when a situation comes into play. So the silent data corruption and prevention is something that I think is pretty unique to the way that the implementation is put together with AppAssure and with eFolder and how that works. And that's something that I also think is a unique technology with the sort of symbiotic relationship that's created here.
So Lliam, a question just came in that's kind of related just to this, so let's try to tackle it right now.
Sure.
The question from John is this based on Replay 4 or the new Replay 5, or I guess AppAssure version 5? Also, on silent data corruption, is that done once a day or on an ongoing basis as data is coming into the remote core in your data center?
Okay, good questions. So the silent data corruption was actually originally put in for version 4, but I will tell you, at the time that all of this was being put together, we were right at the cusp of where version 4 for AppAssure was sort of winding up. There was a new version of version 5 that was currently still in beta. It had, excuse me, a lot of the features that we really needed, and a lot of the testing and a lot of the enhancements were put into version 5. But I would tell you, it works in version 4 and it works in version 5. So either one of those. And in terms of the silent data corruption, every time an incremental is taken, and that incremental is moved into the eFolder AppAssure Cloud. So whether you decide to do that at the end of the day, which is an option for you, or you decide to do that throughout the day, because it may be a bandwidth constraint that you have at a particular customer location. But inevitably, whichever way you see that, as that incremental hits the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, the integrity check is done, and the silent data corruption is looked at that point. Now, one of the things that I guess is sort of inherent to that question, and it's something worth pointing out, is that if you look at many vendors, one of the things that we really struggled with a little bit as we were looking for a partner to be able to put our storage in the cloud with is retention periods. So we wanted to be able to have a scenario where the retention periods local to the customer and the retention periods in our AppAssure Cloud were different. I, for example, want to have a situation where I'm keeping 90 days worth of incrementals on customer premise, but I don't necessarily need to keep 90 days worth of incrementals in the AppAssure Cloud, because that's a situation where that's really for disasters, right? And one of the things that AppAssure and eFolder allow you to do is to be able to change retention periods not only by what server it is you're backing up, but they also allow you to change retention periods by which core you have. So for example, you may have a core that's at the customer's premise that has one retention period. You may have a core that's in your own hosting facility, and maybe that has a separate retention period. And then you may have yet a third core that is in the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, and that again may have a third retention period. But to answer your question, anytime the eFolder AppAssure Cloud sees an incremental that comes in, that's when the silent data corruption is checked.
So Liam, there's a follow-on question to that from Ralph. With both AppAssure and eFolder performing ongoing checks to prevent corruption, is there any assurance that these two would not conflict with each other, or that there's any contention of any kind?
There is. The one thing that you'll see with AppAssure is that things seem to be pretty well thought out in terms of you can set in AppAssure how many, let's just say, for example, you had a customer that had 10 servers, right? You obviously wouldn't want to back up all 10 servers at the same time every 15 minutes. Forget the fact of what you might do to your BDR appliance, but the amount of network traffic that would cause, might be an undesired outcome for the customer's perspective. So you have the ability to go in on the core and to be able to set how many of those incrementals are allowed to run at the same time. And it's that partnership that you see happening in the AppAssure level and the eFolder level that allow you to make sure that those two technologies aren't stepping on each other.
So a slightly different question, but I think it's something that I think we should maybe address now. It says, so John makes the point, the downfall of image backup is finding a file. Client knows a file is missing but has no idea when it was deleted. So I guess, can you kind of talk a little bit about granular file restoration?
Sure. So, and this is probably at a couple of different levels, right? So if you look at the way that AppAssure works, AppAssure is similar for anybody who has used Zenith, which is a Shadow Protect sort of core technology. Anybody who's used some of the other products that are out there, they do allow you to basically go through the list where you can see the incrementals. Now you do this inside of your core where you can see each incremental that was taken. And you can see, for example, I have a server and maybe it was backed up at 9 o'clock, 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, 10 o'clock, that kind of thing. And you can select one of those incrementals and you can mount that point. So you don't necessarily have to recover the entire server or go and look in a virtual server to be able to go and get data where you're just looking for a file or a folder. You can actually mount that image and then go in and look and just copy and paste out of that folder location whatever it is that you're looking for. So that gives you the ability to go in at the file level. Now, if this was a Microsoft Exchange, and oftentimes one of the things that we get involved with, because we have a tremendous number of customers that have lots and lots and lots of Exchange servers, is the ability to go in and recover a contact or recover a deleted email or recover a folder that somebody has accidentally dragged and dropped and lost or gotten rid of. One of the things that you'll see in AppAssure is the ability to have integrated Exchange message level restore. So the way that works is if you go into AppAssure and you open up that incremental, as you open it up, you'll see that the technologies that are associated with that incremental show up underneath. So for example, if I was looking at a Microsoft Exchange database in this case, as I open that up, I would see Microsoft Exchange, and as I open that up again, I would see all of my Exchange databases that I might be looking at. I would then right-click on the database that I would be interested in, and you can see that you can mount that database. There is a wizard that pops up. It shows you, without having to do any restores, all of the mailboxes that were in that database. You can drill down right down to the message level, and you can click off what you want to restore. Now, what's interesting in the Exchange restore is you can not only restore it directly onto the mail server, but you can restore it into alternate places on the mail server, and you can restore it to PST file if you really just want to do an export. So there is some options in how you want to do what I'm going to call non-catastrophic restores. In other words, restores that aren't, I've lost the whole server and I need everything back, but rather I have one-off things that I need to be able to go and get. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Lliam, there's a follow-up from John, and there's a slightly different kind of problem I think he's trying to get at. He says we need to know which one to mount, or it could be 70 backups ago. We want to be able to search for it. So the file. I think the issue is we want to be able to search for the file so we can tell which image contains the file. So what's the process if you don't really know which image contains the file that you're looking for?
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no magic or automated process. If you knew, if you had a customer who said to you, "Hey, listen, we've misplaced the file. We don't know if we misplaced it today, last week, last month, or 3 months ago, but at some point in time, we've misplaced it. We'd like you to go back and get that." I think that's the question that's being asked, right? So. In that scenario, there is no automated way to be able to search through images to be able to find a particular file. That doesn't exist. You would have to sort of mount images to be able to go back and look to find the file that you were looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then I guess before we move on, there's one more question just around retention policies. And can you explain a little bit about what's happening in the eFolder Aperture Cloud? And the basic question from Dominic is, what's doing the roll-ups on the eFolder side?
Okay, I understand that. So the way that eFolder and AppAssure work together is that on the AppAssure, on the local core, the appliance that you would have on your customer side, you're going to have, like I said, an appliance, and the backups from all of the servers, the workstations, the laptops, whatever it is, are going to come in and they're going to be stored as incrementals, right? Now, one of the things that I think is core, fundamental, and key here is that core is going to go ahead and it's going to do some roll-ups and things that it does, but it's not going to do those until you have had a chance to take those incrementals and push them up into the eFolder AppAssure Cloud. In other words, we want to make sure that both the local appliance and the eFolder AppAssure Cloud receive the exact same amount of data in the exact same format before anybody starts doing any roll-ups for anything. Now, one of the reasons that's important is because if there is a problem at some point during a roll-up, which you have seen with some other products, you don't want to have damaged your backups, damaged your integrity chain, and all of a sudden have a situation where you have some exposure. So the technology that actually does the roll-up is built into AppAssure. There is some retention period that you can go in and set on the core that allows you to say, when do you want to do a roll-up? How many hourlies, for example, do you want to keep? How many incrementals do you want to keep? How many days do you want to keep? How many weeks do you want to keep? How many months do you want to keep, right? And you can set up this whole retention period. Now, the cool part is, as you set that retention period up on that core, you can go back in to the eFolder AppAssure Cloud because they give you 100% full access to that core. And you can go in and change how you want those retention periods to be set up for the cloud. So that gives you the flexibility to now say, hey, you know what? I would like to be able to keep 90 days local at a customer, but maybe I only care about keeping 5 days in the cloud. So, if I'm paying for storage, and that's part of the equation here, it now gives you the ability to change that retention period such that you can maximize what it is that you're actually trying to do, but the technology that actually manages that retention period is inside of AppAssure.
Yeah, and I guess it's important to note that when we talk about the AppAssure, the eFolder AppAssure Cloud, eFolder is running a AppAssure core in our cloud environment. I mean, that's the key thing, is that you've got an AppAssure core running at the local client location, and then you've got them running we have these virtualized in our cloud environment for your organization or for your clients. So that's, you have them operating at both sides, and that's why you're able to have the different retention policies at the different locations.
Right, and I would even say, you know, one of the real strengths, I think, to this partnership with eFolder and AppAssure is the transparency between what eFolder allows you to do in their data center and what you have access to at your customer site. There is virtually no difference, meaning that if you look at eFolder, when you create an account with eFolder, they give you a RDP connection directly to that box with the core. You have full access to go in and configure that core the way you want it configured. They give you access to a virtual firewall that you can then go in and you can configure the way you want that set up. So you can create disaster recovery scenarios that best fit what it is that you have promised in your service level agreements. And it gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. And I'll mention another thing too that works really well, but it kind of gets you thinking about, you know, the possibilities because of this kind of flexibility, right? And that is, AppAssure supports the ability on your local appliance to be able to take those incrementals and those fulls and to be able to export those to removable media, things like USB hard drives, right? So you can now create a much more full-fledged DR plan where you say, you know what, we keep 90 days on site, we keep 1 week in the cloud, but every quarter or every month or every 6 months or however often you want to do it, we attach a USB hard drive to our local core. We replicate all of the images onto that USB hard drive, and we take that USB hard drive and we keep that for long-term retention, you know, so that I have a relatively inexpensive method of keeping some compliance issues where I may need to keep things for 7 or 10 years. I don't necessarily want to pay for the storage for 7 or 10 years, right? So the question then is, how do I archive that stuff off, keep it safe, and put that in a place that then would meet those compliance issues? So there's another way that you can use this because it's so flexible between the core technologies. Does that help?
Yes. So I think that's all the questions we have on this section, I guess. So go ahead.
Okay, great. All right, let's see if we can get this thing to behave for me here. There we go. So one of the things I almost touched on there for a second was the recovery piece. And this is the piece I would say to you, as you look at various providers, no matter who they are, eFolder included, it's very important for you to be very comfortable with what would happen if I lost X. How would I be able, what would I have to do, how complicated, how difficult is it going to be for me to be able to tell my customer, I can get you back up and running in X period of time, and what has to be done to do that? So one of the things that eFolder has done, and they are the only people that I know that have done this, is they give you access to a virtualized firewall as part of your account. So in that method, it allows you to now say, I want to set up a VPN, I want to set up a persistent connection now between my customer and to this data center. I want to set up an IPsec tunnel. I want to set up a bridge, for example, where let's say I had a SQL server that was running a core application, and it was that server that died, right? I could go to the cloud. I could boot up my SQL server. But of course, the obvious issue here is, okay, that's nice. I have the SQL server now running in the data center, but how are the laptops, the workstations, the people that are back at the customer premise, how are they going to get, how are the applications running on their desktop, how are they going to get access to that SQL server that's running in a data center far, far away? Well, this is where you can set up these IPsec tunnels and the bridges and those kinds of things, because in doing that, you now are in a situation where you can bridge that gap. You can make that virtualized infrastructure now appear to be part of your infrastructure at the customer site. You don't have to go back in and reconfigure Outlook or whatever the application is, or user shares, or whatever it is that you're trying to virtualize. And the net result here is that it truly allows you to be able to offer an in-the-cloud recovery that actually not only virtualizes the server, but it allows you to actually bring an application back into production. Now, I would tell you that, like I've said I think twice at this point, this is one of the key differentiating factors when you look at eFolder and their continuity cloud. There is so much transparency in the environment in which they give you. You really have lots and lots of different methods here that you can use to be able to conduct the restore process. Sure, everybody does the backup piece, but the restore process, in my mind, is really where the rubber hits the road. And I think that this is one of those key differentiating factors.
Yeah, so Lliam, a kind of a technical question. Barry asks, if your customer is running thin clients for users instead of a true PC, the emergency in the cloud, is it void? So I guess the question is if you're using thin clients and you go to in the cloud recovery, technically possible? If so, what can you say?
Oh yeah, sure. So think of it this way, right? So my assumption at some level is the thin client is it's the presentation layer on a network. So I have an application server. We've loaded up Microsoft Office. I have some business line of applications. I've got printers. I've got things like this that are installed on my Citrix, on my thin client, whatever it might be, terminal services, right? And if it's that server that goes down, and the rest of the back-end infrastructure, like, for example, the Microsoft Exchange server, is still surviving, then sure, you could use your local appliance, stand up your terminal server, and everybody keeps going. Cloud's not involved. But then the question could come, what if, in fact, that's not what happened? What if, in fact, what has happened is the customers come into work and realize that the building is missing, or that somebody has stolen their servers, or that there's been a flood, or some other thing that happens that renders the entire infrastructure invalid, right? So in that case, you could take all of the servers, you could boot them up into the cloud. If this was a terminal server solution, you could open up port 3389, allow people to RDP into it. If you were in more of a situation where you needed some compliance, you maybe what you do is you open up a VPN tunnel where people have to VPN in, and then they could log into that terminal server. Or maybe you had two-factor authentication, so that was part of your infrastructure. So those infrastructure pieces would still work as you were to bring everything up into the cloud. So the fact that the presentation layer minimizes what you would see on the workstation, it doesn't actually minimize the fact that you could have a facilities loss, right? And that's really where I think that this solution comes into play.
Great.
Okay.
Let's see here. So, Lliam, I think let's see here. Let's make a couple comments. A bunch of questions around business. You know, kind of the business relationship. How do I get started? Those sorts of questions have come in. And so let me kind of try to address those now. And so, Lliam, I'm going to take control of the keyboard real quick and just toggle through make a couple comments, and then we'll get right back to Q&A with Lliam. So, questions. So, what does this cost? I mean, I guess the first question is if you aren't already an eFolder partner, you do need to join our partner program to get access to the eFolder AppAssure Cloud service offering and to get access to the Continuity Cloud service offering. So you may already be an AppAssure partner, for instance. We are working closely with the AppAssure sales team when they come across partners that want to use a replication service in a public cloud environment or need a Continuity Cloud type offering. they direct you to eFolder. So as I mentioned, this service offering will be generally available on April 2nd. And what you need to do if you are interested and you aren't yet an eFolder partner is simply go to eFolder.net/join. Fill out the form there, and one of our account managers will immediately follow up with you to explain how to get started with eFolder. And the important thing to understand here is you're welcome to continue to source your licenses from AppAssure. That's perfectly okay. But you do need to be an eFolder partner to access these services. Alternatively, you are able to purchase the AppAssure licenses you will need in the future from eFolder. And the way that's priced is it's priced $35 per server per month. Now, if you are leveraging the cloud environment, the way that's priced is it's $50 per 250 gigabytes, and that's which is roughly 20 cents a gigabyte. But you have to have a minimum of $100 of monthly recurring revenue going with eFolder at any one time. So that's, basically 500 gigabytes running in our cloud environment as a bare minimum. So that's basically the pricing. And then Lliam just talked about the eFolder Continuity Cloud. There's two different versions. There's a medium and a large, depending on kind of the complexity of the environment you're looking to bring up. And the pricing is simple. It doesn't cost you any more on a per gigabyte basis, day in, day out throughout the year. You're able to basically, on demand, in an emergency as-needed basis only, bring up the Continuity Cloud compute node. And the way that's priced is it's $150 per week. You have to do a minimum of 2 weeks. That's for the medium cloud. And then for the large, it's $450 a week, again, with a minimum of 2 weeks. So very simple pricing model. If you never have the need to do an in-the-cloud recovery, then you never pay a dime. But the minute you need it, those are the wholesale pricing that we offer to eFolder partners. So again, I want to kind of get back to the Q&A log. So let me just say, if you are interested in joining eFolder, go to our website, eFolder.net/join. If you aren't yet a partner, if you are a partner, you will have access to the eFolder Aperture Cloud as of April 2nd. One other thing to note, the eFolder Continuity Cloud offering works with eFolder BDR and with our Shadow Protect service as well. So the Continuity Cloud, the ability to do in-the-cloud recovery, is a capability that applies to whether you're using AppAssure or Shadow Protect with an eFolder solution. And that will be generally available to eFolder partners on March 12th. So about 2 weeks before the eFolder Aperture Cloud offering is available. So want to get back to the questions and give the floor back to Lliam. So Lliam, you've got the floor, and let me find our next question here.
Okay.
Let me take John's question. John's question is, when will eFolder BDR with AppAssure be available? We don't yet have, we haven't yet made a decision on that. So we are looking at it, but there's no release date for a version of eFolder BDR with AppAssure yet. So another question kind of around pricing from Roy. Is the eFolder pricing sold to the partner and then resold, or is the pricing direct to customer? Great question, Roy. All of the eFolder pricing that you see in kind of a forum like this where we're just talking to partners, that is wholesale pricing to your organization. And what's unique about eFolder's business model is we do not publish retail price points. We do not have suggested retail price points. Our pricing is to you, the solution provider, MSP, or VAR, and then you, of course, can take that. That becomes a wholesale cost input to your business, and you can turn around and price it and package it however you see fit in the retail marketplace. So there's a question from Scott. Is the $35 per server in addition to the license cost we pay AppAssure? No, it's not in addition. That $35 a month per server covers AppAssure licenses that you source through eFolder. So if you already have AppAssure licenses, you can sign up, you've already paid for those licenses. You may have licensed them. I'm not familiar with all of AppAssure's licensing schemes, but I know they have a very traditional, at least one option is a traditional perpetual software license. If you've already purchased licenses, you may use those licenses with the eFolder AppAssure Cloud service offering, and there's no additional charge for those. However, if you do source new licenses, you have a choice of sourcing them from eFolder, and it's $35 per month per server. I guess, Lliam, this question for you. Who provides the on-site hardware to be used with the AppAssure Core, and what is the cost?
Sure. So you, the solution provider, would provide that. There are some hardware specifications that AppAssure puts forth to be able to help you right-size that. But I think one of the beautiful things that you'll see in the solution is the ability for you, the solution provider, to create not only a custom BDR, but one that's branded, one that you manage, one that I know, for example, in the AppAssure recovery reports for version 5, you now have the ability to put your logo in those. So this can be a completely white label solution for you and allows you to really create a BDR solution that isn't commercially available, and you can do it in a way that makes sense for you and your customers as opposed to a one-size-fits-all kind of solution.
Great. So let me handle this one. This one comes from Mark. It says, please clarify if the solution you're describing assumes version 5. When will version 5 officially be released, and how do existing AppAssure partners download version 5? So I think Lliam addressed from a technical perspective that, some of the, many of the capabilities we talked about today are available in the 4.x version of the software that's generally available today. In terms of version 5, eFolder, in our relationship with AppAssure, has an OEM licensing opportunity with that software. So we will be licensing the feature set that's available in version 5, and that will be available. You will be able to source AppAssure licenses from eFolder that support version 5 on April 2nd. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. Let me go back to the question log here. So a question from David, can we use our existing eFolder BDR with Shadow Protect and AppAssure, or does this replace Shadow Protect? And I think the answer there, David, is eFolder's approach to the marketplace is to have an open cloud architecture. So our eFolder BDR solution today supports Shadow Protect. That's not changing. We are huge partners of StorageCraft and very happy partners of StorageCraft. We have hundreds of very happy eFolder partners today that are using eFolder BDR with StorageCraft software solutions. That is not going to change. What we are adding is AppAssure. What we're adding is AppAssure, and we're doing that to meet the needs of our partners who want to be able to leverage our cloud environment for backup and disaster recovery solutions. So we will continue to support both. So hopefully, David, that answers your question.
I would actually like to tag on to that just a little bit. One thing to be aware of, though, is that if you are somebody who's transitioning from StorageCraft to an AppAssure, the one thing to note is that those two products will not coexist. The agents will not coexist. The core will not coexist. And the reason for that is that StorageCraft uses their own sort of storage driver that they have, and eFolder does not. eFolder actually uses the VSS driver from Microsoft. So this is sort of the good and the bad, but I would tell you, as you're making those transitions, it's not possible for both of those applications to coexist on a single box.
Okay, great. Good technical clarification there. So John wanted to know what the Continuity Cloud pricing is again. It's there in front of you. There is a technical question, just kind of what defines medium versus large cloud continuity. And it's about the amount of resources that we make available. What we will do as a part of a follow-up today's webinar is to send you a technical note that precisely describes the feature set of the Continuity Cloud and the differences between medium and large. Okay, so we only have, we're really at the top of the hour, and so I think, in the interest of staying organized and meeting our commitment for this to be an hour webinar, I think we'll call it here, even though we've got questions still coming in. I want to thank everybody for making the time today to learn more about the eFolder Aperture Cloud, and I want to really thank Lliam Holmes, our partner, for doing such a very informative technical discussion and overview of the solution today. Lliam, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and everybody, just a final note, we will have a recording of this available. We will send you a link to it, and then we are permanently archiving all of our eFolder Expert Series webinars on eFolder's YouTube webpage. So if you have colleagues who you'd want to direct them to this, that's a very easy way to view this on replay in the very near future. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day. Take care now.